Special guests with us, Carol Roth. She's the author of this book, You Will Own Nothing. Well, it actually is You Will Own a House, a car. No, none of those things. You'll own nothing. It's your war with the new financial world order and how to fight back. It's Carol Roth. She's back with us. Hey, Carol, how are you?
Hey, Jimmy. So great to be back with you.
Great to see you again. Also, our main man, Paul Stone, the co-founder and CEO of Colonial Metals Group, Florida-based precious metal supplier that helps clients leverage gold and silver to develop secure retirement plans. And he also has a Substack, thepaulstone.substack.com. Welcome back to the show, Paul. How are you?
I'm great, Jimmy. Thank you so much for having me.
So I wanted to get your opinion on this. So I just want to show. So Matt Gaetz, we showed this on the show before, but I want to show it to you again because Biden is doing something on his way out the door. So Matt Gaetz went around Congress and he was showing all the corruption that's happening there. Let's watch a little bit.
Congressman Gaetz offered to take us on a tour.
So one of the committees where people have a lot of information is the Appropriations Committee, because they can view almost any vector of government funding. And so, this is Mr. Rutherford's office. He's on the Ethics Committee and the Appropriations Committee. 152 stock trades. Stocks go through the roof. And actually bought Raytheon stock the day that Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if every American could make money off of war.
Yeah, setting aside the whole shame and ethics questions. How many more on our hit list here?
There are a few more. I wish there were fewer on the hit list. I wish we could only stop at one or two offices, but as it turns out, energy is a sector that sees a lot of congressional stock trading.
Sure.
And we have members who are on the Energy Subcommittee of Appropriations, like Michael Guest, chairman of the Ethics Committee, and he's traded somewhere between tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars in energy stocks. He's been buying online gaming stocks and just making a killing on them. So you would think that the people that were on the Ethics Committee would be your best allies in this fight, but indeed they're some of the most prolific traders. And not only trading, but in the case of Mr. Guest, trading in an area where he has access to energy information more so than almost any other American.
And no indication that he wants to maybe slow down, pump the brakes, recognize that there might be some appearance of impropriety here?
It seems as though the pace is only accelerating.
All right.
So it goes on, but you get the point. And so now on his way out of office, guess what Joe Biden's doing? President Biden calls for a ban on congressional stock trading. Nobody in Congress should be able to make money in the stock market while they're in Congress. Is that his way of saying thanks for kicking him out before his term was done? Is that what he's doing? Is he trying to stick it back to Nancy Pelosi and all the people who made him? Is that well, let me send it to you, Carol. What do you think?
You took the words right out of my mouth. This is a direct dig at Nancy Pelosi, who is one of the most prolific traders. There's this great account on X called Unusual Whales. And one of the things they do on a regular basis is they track the trading to see who the best traders are in Congress. And Pelosi is always near the top of the list. So this is definitely a dig right at her. But I have to also say, Jimmy, going back to that video, amazing to me that every single one of these people that he was talking about were on the Ethics Committee. Like, you couldn't write this. It's like if you were trying to write this as like a sitcom, it couldn't be more on the nose than that the guys who are in charge of the Ethics Committee are engaging in, this insider trading, taking the knowledge that they're influencing and that they have before everyone else. And so I think it's pretty hilarious. We've actually had people in Congress put forth bills, many bills about this. But I think it's pretty funny that this is the last dig of Biden. And it just goes to my theory that, like, I'm almost 100% sure that him and Jill voted for Trump.
No, Paul, is this what it looks like to you too? Do you think that this is Joe Biden trying to get back at the people who forced him out and had to give up his presidency? Is that, or does he really care about how it looks?
Well, it's Joe Biden, he thinks there's one drone flying over New Jersey when he was quoted the other day. So we always got to remember it's the regime running Biden. It's the regime that's running him.
Okay.
Those who would have been attached to continue with power had he been remained in place as the candidate seeking re-election, they're bitter. I'm sure that's what it is.
I'm sure that's what it is. Well, here little bit more. Professor Zenkis says there was a congressional stock ban bill before Congress in 2022 when Democrats had majorities in both the House and the Senate and could have passed it. Biden did nothing, and most importantly, Nancy Pelosi as Speaker made sure it was tabled until the Republicans took over. So, of course, Biden waits until a month before he leaves office and Trump is president-elect, and the GOP is about to control both chambers of Congress to come out strongly for this. This is how Democrats operate, and why we can't stand them. They don't use their power to do the right thing when they have the power. Instead, they wait until Republicans have power and then say, oh, look, we are backing the right thing. Why aren't they doing something? They're all frauds, right? So that is pretty fraudulent behavior. One more. This is what Pelosi portfolio update. Our Nancy Pelosi trading strategy has risen 54% so far this year. Representative Pelosi has made almost 100 times her annual congressional salary off of her portfolio. Last year, Pelosi held up efforts to ban congressional trading. That's Nancy Pelosi. And Nancy Pelosi made $3 million in 3 hours insider trading. That's 17 times her annual salary. She's also made $4 million on a single trade. That's 20 times her salary. She owns a $200,000 Porsche 911, multiple mansions worth over $5 million apiece. Nancy Pelosi's stock portfolio has hit an all-time high as plus 93%. Here's one more. Breaking, Pelosi wins again. After Broadcom crushes earnings, she's now made an estimated $1,800,000 on her Avgo buy. That's 10 times her yearly salary on just one trade. So, you know, Carol, there was a time when Barack Obama signed a ban on this stuff, and then the next year he repealed it. Do you remember that?
I do. I am old enough to remember that. And as you've noted in some of these posts, there have been, on a bipartisan basis, actually, many bills that have been introduced, because I think that most people understand this doesn't make a lot of things. But Nancy Pelosi is the Gordon Gekko of Congress. I mean, she is the absolute Wall Street legend. And this is how her and her husband make lots of money. She was actually interviewed about this. I did a piece about congressional insider trading a couple of years ago, and she was interviewed and she said, oh, you know, it's not insider trading, it's capitalism. And I just thought that that was just so amazing that she was throwing that out there. But I do think the tides are changing, and we're seeing it now, how people are speaking up and their voices are being heard, especially with X. And I think that this is something that could get through perhaps the next Congress, if you get enough people talking about it and putting that pressure, because there definitely is some support from Congress, just not at the very top levels from the people who are making all the money, like Nancy Pelosi.
Well, don't you think that this would lower confidence, Paul, in people's just in general investing in the stock market if they see the people running government manipulating it like this?
I think you broaden out just a little and you look at how it's just another very powerful example that those in Washington have no cares for us out on Main Street. They're never thinking about us. They're always thinking about themselves. And when they see, people becoming extraordinarily wealthy over the last 10, 15 years from all the money printing to save our economy from the devastation of 2008, they want a part of that. You know, they probably think like peons. And those are the lobbyists whispering in their ears from Monday through Friday. American citizens aren't camped out in D.C. whispering in their ears for what we need, because we're at work out here in the real world. And so it's just another really, really strong example that as people sit back in their lazy boys and they watch the news and they're angry about the headlines they see or they're confused, just recognize nothing inside Washington will change Washington. And it's not a swamp. A long time ago, it was a swamp, and they drained that. Concrete and steel is what makes up Washington today. It will take a wrecking ball, not pulling a plug. There's nothing that's liquid in Washington. It's all hardened steel and concrete. That regime, that beast of a bureaucracy, cares only for itself. It feeds on itself, and it thinks we're the enemy.
And I think it's a different different set of rules is
Yeah.
really what's frustrating to people, because if people on Main Street, if you worked in a company and you knew what was going on and you were able to trade with the same level of information, I don't think people would have so many issues with it. But the fact of the matter is, this is something that is illegal for everybody else, everyone on Wall Street, everyone on Main Street, and somehow Congress is exempt, just like they're exempt from everything else. They're supposed to be representatives, they're supposed to be public servants, but the only thing they're serving is their own interests.
Yep.
Well, here it is. Hawley introduces the Pelosi Act. Hey, congratulations, Nancy. You finally have a bill named after you.
Yeah, finally.
Congratulations. It bans lawmakers from trading stocks. Like that was introduced way back in January 23. And here's what our good friend Glenn with two N's Greenwald has to say about it. It's a textbook example of Washington theater. Let's hear what he says.
What's more interesting than the fact that the amendment failed, and it doesn't mean the bill is never going to pass, it still could pass as a standalone bill, is exactly what happened, which in particular, the Democrats, every Democrat except one on the Senate Judiciary Committee voted no. The Democrats are a majority. As a result, the fact that they all voted no, except for Senator John Ossoff of Georgia, who voted yes, voted in favor of Senator Hawley's proposed ban, meant that as long as they got one or two Republican no votes, the amendment from Senator Hawley was going to fail. So here you see every Democrat, Senator Durbin, Feinstein, White House, Klobuchar, Blumenthal, Hirono, Cory Booker, all of them just voting no. And then John Cornyn and Tom Tillis, the Republican from Texas, the Republican from North Carolina, joined those Democrats in voting no. And that right there, you see it on the screen, that formed a majority of no votes that ensured that Senator Hawley's amendment was going to fail. As soon as it became obvious that there were enough no votes to ensure failure, that was when all these brave Republicans stepped up to vote yes, knowing that there was no chance that it could actually succeed. So you have Lindsey Graham, Chuck Grassley, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, Senator Hawley, Senator Cotton, Kennedy, Marsha Blackburn, and then joined by John Ossoff. Now, some of these people are actual, genuine supporters of this ban. That obviously includes Senator Hawley, it includes Senator Ossoff. But what so often is done is so much of this is theater, where you get very safe senators from very safe blue states who are never going to be primary challenged by the Democratic Party. They don't primary challenge anybody. And who are in states where their seats are very safe. So they can vote no on anything, including something as popular as banning members of Congress from profiteering off stock trading. And then once it's safely defeated, other people who aren't quite as safe in their seats can come up and pretend to vote yes, pretend to support it, knowing that in reality, its failure is already guaranteed. That's exactly what happened here.
So it's all theater. And, I try to say that we're really run by a cabal of billionaires in the West. And people say, oh, really, Jim, you think they have secret meetings? And I'm like, no, it's called a session of Congress.
Yeah.
When they have a session of Congress, do you really think they're in there doing the bidding of workers and students and the retired people and the infirmed and sick? No, they're in there doing the bidding for themselves and their corporate masters, right? So, Carol, do you think this will ever you think we'll ever go back to that one brief shining moment when this was outlawed and that we could have some integrity back to the stock trading in America?
Well, it's funny that you said that about Congress. I always call Congress a place where they legally launder money and perform political theater, and that's what they've been doing for a long time. I think the way that this maybe turns around is if we can somehow get some blind voting where people have to go on the record, but you don't know what everybody else is doing in place. I think that would be the way to do it. I don't know that the people who are in charge are going to do that, but maybe if you get a switcheroo, you get somebody who is the speaker speaker who's from outside of Congress, gets nominated or something like that. But that would really be the way, kind of like they elect the Pope, where everybody puts down the piece of paper and then they put out the, the
Yes.
smoke. Yes, we now you can no longer insider trade. But there are some people who think this is a big deal, and I do think that we're at a point where people are very fed up with the status quo, that they want to change, that they are not happy with what Congress has done and how it has completely obliterated Main Street. And so if it is going to happen soon, I think now is the moment to seize on that and let people use their voices and basically shame these members of Congress into doing the right thing, because I think we've seen that be effective recently. And if we can get more of that, now's probably the time to seize that moment.
When you say recently, you're talking about the CR bill, the continuing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think with the election, with the CR bill, with some of these appointments that Trump has floated, the flip-flopping that we're seeing in terms of that, it's because there has been this free speech backlash from people who are using their voices and saying, this is what we want of you. And that is getting out in a very meaningful way. It's no longer that the corporate press is the gatekeepers. We have folks like you, Jimmy. We have folks on Twitter who are able to now spread messages in a different way. And that is meaningful and that is getting to people. So I think that we're starting to just see the beginning of that. And so now is really the time to put the pedal to the metal on that.
Do you, since you brought up the continuing resolution, how did that what were people objecting to the most, and has it changed? Is what's going on? Can you tell me what's going on with that, the latest?
Is that back to me?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, the bill had some Ozempic. It went from 1,500 pages to 118 in 24 hours. So that was pretty amazing. I'm still not exactly sure what is in it. I was just on another network talking, and it looks like it has enough votes that it has cleared the House in its current form. And now that is going to go to the Senate, and we'll see if the Senate approves it. And it sounds like, it's got some pieces in it, but not, obviously the whole pork kit and caboodle that was in there the last time. And I think the objection, I think what people really wanted was to see single issue bills, right? We want to vote on these things individually. We want you to go on record and tell us where you stand on this issue, not, oh, well, I had to vote for it because I needed to get this important thing attached over here. But, as a first step, that's a pretty impressive turnaround in 24 hours that we have not seen before. I don't think we have a precedent for that. So if that could be done, and Trump hasn't taken office, the new Congress hasn't taken session yet, that maybe that type of model can really be accelerated, where people are using their voices and saying, no, business as usual is not going to fly.
So there were so many things in that continuing resolution that even I became aware of. Like, they had stuff in there. I don't know if it's still in there. It went from 1,500 pages down to 100. They had stuff in there that would block Trump's Department of Justice from investigating crimes that were being committed by members of Congress, because they knew he was going to go after the crimes that was clear to me that happened on the January 6th committee, and they wanted to insulate those people from that. And that was included in a funding bill. What is that? You're right. So people want to vote on that. Why don't you have a vote on that? Don't stick it into a funding bill right before Christmas, which is exactly what Massey said was going to happen. And that's exactly, it's amazing you could predict the corruption. And Mike Johnson doesn't seem to be any different than anybody on any of this. And you've been following this at all, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. To me, and I grew up outside Northern Virginia, so I have a little bit of a sense of what that city seems to, how it seems to operate. It's like juggling chainsaws. And these funding bills are a game of extortion. That's all they are. You want to fund the government, you want to fund the military? Great, you're going to have to sign all these things that no one else would really want. And they plan to load up the bill with so many things. I mean, how long would you read your service agreement with your
Right.
cellular carrier? You just click I agree. You're not going to read it because it's 180 pages long, it's 100 pages long, it's 50 pages long. And that's part of it. And Carol made a great point earlier when she said, We could shame the politicians into passing a law that restricts them from bad behavior. But deeper than that is all of the people, not every single one of them, but the overwhelming majority of the people are already bad people. You're not going to wag the badness out of their characters. We would have to look at how we re-engineer the election process. We would have to look at what we can change as people ourselves. You know, I've said, just for a perspective, what if no one voted 2 years from now, right? You had you'd lose, a third of the House, half the House and a third of the Senate. And 2 years later, no one voted. And 6 years later, no one voted. And we had none of this. You know, it's just for a perspective to understand that the choices that come to us on the ballot are rarely ever good because they're the same kind of people they're replacing. And I don't mean to assault anyone's character, but if we just look plainly at the track record of what we've been getting for 20, 30, 40 years, it's the same thing. It's all hooey, and none of it represents the interests of you and me. And the reason I feel fine coming down hard on them is they actually I didn't have to swear anything when I became CEO of a company or a sales guy at some company. They swear an oath. An oath. So they have to be held to a higher standard. We get to hold them to a higher standard. And if they're not going to defend the interests of Americans and individuals that are already here, then I've got a lot of curse words to describe their character.
I certainly do too. Well, good for Joe Biden. He's given so many fingers on his way out the door. I didn't know he had so many. We should just kind of compliment him for having the physical acuity to hold up a finger, I guess. But all right, so over to Stefan. Let's get to our next story.
All right, Crystal says, "Hi, Jimmy and crew. I'm the Mugga for Palestine gal. Thanks for introducing me to Do Dissidents.
Oh, yeah.
Russ interviewing us helps the cause. Hashtag Mugga for Palestine." Thank you, Crystal. Brave privacy browser fan here. Brave staved my cell phone 1.5 days from no ads. Be crypto. Rob Braxton would be a good person to interview about internet privacy. His channel is Rob Braxman, Tech on Rumble. His site is braxman.me. Thank you for that, heart. Bradley Dose, Jimmy, I know you keep saying no to it. Oh, but I read that one about